The oldest recipes in the world were not written down. They were passed hand to hand, across a fire, across a table, across an ocean. The Mediterranean has been doing this longer than most civilizations have had names. I grew up watching it happen in real time. My grandmother did not measure anything. She tasted, she adjusted, she trusted the salt. That is what this show is about. My name is Andromeda Zouganelis. I am Greek by origin, Canarian by intention, and a student of every table I have ever been invited to sit at. Salt and Story is where I bring those tables to you. The food, the culture, the history that lives inside both, and the places where all three meet in ways that change how you see the world. Let me tell you something about salt before we go any further. Salt is the oldest currency the world ever traded. Roman soldiers were paid in it. That's where the word salary comes from. Every civilization that built itself near water understood that salt was not a seasoning. It was a preservation system, a language, a way of making sure that what mattered, the food, the memory, the story, survived the winter. I think about that every time I cook. Every time I reach for the salt and feel its weight in my hand before it hits the pan. Something that old deserves a moment of respect. I grew up on Mykonos, and before you picture the Mykonos you've seen in photographs, the white walls, the blue doors, the crowds with their cocktails at sunset, I want you to understand that there is another Mykonos underneath all of that. There always has been, a quieter one, a kitchen one. The Mykonos I grew up in smelled like olive oil heating in a pan at 7 in the morning. It sounded like my grandmother arguing with the fishermen about whether yesterday's catch was fresh enough. It never was, according to her, even when it was. It tasted like lucumades, small honey-drenched dough balls, eaten standing up at the feast of a saint whose name I could never quite pronounce correctly, but whose day we celebrated anyway with full commitment. That Mykonos still exists. You just have to know where the kitchen door is. I want to talk about why I started this show. Because it was not simply because I love food, though I do, unreasonably. It was because I kept having a specific experience, over and over, in every place I traveled and every table I sat at. Someone would cook something for me. Something simple, a soup, a piece of bread, a handful of olives dressed with nothing but thyme and good oil. And I would taste it and feel something I could not immediately name. Not nostalgia exactly, not hunger satisfied. Something older than both of those things. I eventually decided that what I was tasting was memory. Not my own memory, the memory inside the food itself. The accumulated knowledge of every hand that had made this dish before. The centuries of adjustment and correction and love that had refined this particular combination of ingredients into something that could stop a person mid-bite and make them feel, briefly, that they were exactly where they were supposed to be. That is what I am chasing on this show, that feeling, and I want to share it with you. Here is what Salt and Story will be, every Thursday, bi-weekly. We will go to places, not as tourists, as guests. There is a difference. A tourist takes photographs. A guest sits down and eats what is put in front of them and asks the person across the table how their mother made it differently. We will talk about food not as nutrition but as culture, as history, as identity, as the thing that tells you more about a people in one meal than a month of reading about them ever could. We will talk about the Mediterranean because it is my home and because it has been feeding the world's imagination for 3,000 years, and I think it deserves a more honest conversation than it usually gets. We will talk about Tenerife in the Canary Islands, where I am building my next chapter, a place most people fly over on their way somewhere else without understanding what they are missing. And occasionally, I will bring someone to the table with me, someone whose relationship with food and culture gives us a different angle on the same truth. because the best meals I have ever had were never eaten alone. I want to leave you today with one thought, one question, actually, that I want you to carry into your week. When was the last time you ate something slowly enough to actually taste it? Not quickly at a desk, not in a car, not while looking at a screen, but slowly, at a table, with enough time and enough quiet that the food itself could tell you something. If you cannot remember, that is exactly why I made this show. I am Andromeda Zouganelis. This is Salt and Story. New episodes every Thursday, bi-weekly. The table is set. I am glad you found it.